I want you to stop for a moment and think about how many times you've stepped into one of those gleaming Apple stores eager to fork out another few $100s for the latest iPhone. It's a ritual that millions of us repeat every 2 or 3 years. We hand over our hard-earned cash to a way too cool for school Apple genius, and we get a highly capable piece of tech in return. And that trade feels well balanced. Many of us count down the days for the chance. But that's before you do the real maths, because today I'm going to share some shocking stats with you that will be astonishing. So welcome to Future Media Explains. Now cast your mind back to September 2015 and Apple's launch of the iPhone 6s. The base model cost US $649. Now imagine you skipped the store that day and instead of buying the phone, you spent that $649 on Apple stock. At the time, your money would have bought you roughly 23 Apple shares, but since then, Apple's stock has been on a tear, and today your investment, wait for it, would have grown 10x to $6,450. Makes you wonder whether you bought the right thing, doesn't it? How much do you think your iPhone 6s is worth now? A few $100s? But that's just the start of a journey into understanding how Apple really works. And that's what Future Media Explains is for. So let's go back to the first iPhone, launched in mid-2007. I was there. I was one of the people in a massive line with hundreds of others queuing to get my hands on Steve Jobs' latest vision. And I've bought every iPhone since. And it was that sparked this question in my mind. How much have I actually spent now on iPhones? And the answer is just short of $10,000 over 19 years. But if I'd taken the $500 I spent on iPhone 1 and spent it on Apple stock back in 2007, that investment alone would now be worth $33,000 for one phone. And naturally it leads to the question, if I'd never bought an iPhone and bought Apple stock each time instead, how much would I have in the bank today? And the answer shocked me. I think it will shock you. You'd have $105,000. And that's a pretty chunk of change. So has Apple been taking advantage of us, or are we missing something deeper? It's a really good question that I ask myself, so let's try and find out. The honest answer is that Apple has been very responsible in its pricing of the iPhone over the years. Since its very first model, its entry price has only risen from $499 in 2007 to $799 today, and adjusted for inflation, the price has remained remarkably stable for 2 decades. And given how much people view their phone as a status symbol, it suggests that Apple's been very consumer focused. But the truth is that does still miss something, and the proof is in that soaring share price, because there's a hidden variable that's just been shooting to the moon. So, Apple listed on the stock exchange in 1980, but it went on a boom and bust run for nearly 21 years until it hit pay dirt with the iPod. But it wasn't that really blew up Apple's stock. It was the iPhone, which arrived a couple of years later. That has gone on to become the most successful consumer electronics product in history. Now, both products, iPhone and iPod, had strong profit margins, and they were concealed within the price tag. You never saw them. But while the price may not have risen for you and me as consumers, Apple has been busy doing some business jiu-jitsu out of sight to push up its profits. You see, in 2007, when that first iPhone came out, Apple's profit margin was about 14%. But over time, and now, it's doubled. And today, we know that Apple has made bank by engineering your phone to keep you in its ecosystem to retain more of every dollar you spend. Apple didn't need to raise prices because they were successfully capturing more value from you from Apple Music, Apple Pay, the fees you pay on App Store purchases, Apple TV, iCloud, and more. Apple cleverly ensured that the barrier to entry remained low, keeping prices down for the phone, and guaranteed instead a steady cycle of upgrades and sexy new features that kept you locked in, and every step of the way, it told you. It's terribly clever, and this is why. I told you earlier that Apple's profit margin on the original iPhone was 14%, which has doubled over the years, but the real money from the iPhone comes from the apps and products that Apple sells you once it has you hooked. The money it makes from the App Store transactions, for example, and the monthly recurring subscriptions you see in your bank account, they have margins for Apple of 75.4%. And Apple is also paid more than $20 billion a year by Google, remember, to ensure it's the default search engine on your iPhone too. Okay, so let's finish this up. The 3 billion iPhones sold over the years, including every single one of mine, were bought by people who got milked, and I'm one of them. While the shareholders who bought the company stock instead, they've made fortunes. But that's a good thing to know if you want to get ahead, because if I'd invested the same 10,000 I invested in iPhones that are now basically expensive paperweights, if I'd invested that in Apple stock, I'd now be sat on a house deposit. This has been Future Media Explains. Thanks for tuning in. Now, most of the time, I'm not answering my own questions, I'm answering yours. So please send them in, and I will look forward to seeing you next time.